The news came as a shock to everyone. Earth's government received a strange and unexpected message from an alien princess. The princess wasn't just any alien. She was from one of the most powerful and respected species in the galaxy. Her people were known for their advanced technology and unmatched strength. The message she sent was simple but mind-boggling. She would only travel to a distant star system if she was aboard a human ship. At first, the leaders on Earth didn't know how to respond. Why would such a powerful alien princess want to travel on a human ship? Earth was still relatively new to space travel, and while humans had made great progress, they were far behind the advanced civilizations that roamed the stars. The idea of an alien princess, someone used to the finest chips and technology, choosing a human vessel seemed impossible. The message stirred up a lot of discussion. Some Earth leaders thought it might be a trap. What if she's trying to trick us? One officer asked. Perhaps she wants to embarrass us in front of the entire galaxy, another suggested. Others, however, saw a different side to the request. This could be an opportunity to prove that we're not as weak as the other species think, one diplomat argued. The humans had always been underestimated by the other alien species, but this could be their chance to show their true strength. The decision was made quickly, and with a mix of caution and hope, the Earth government decided to take the chance. They would send a human ship to pick up the princess. The question was, which ship would be worthy of such a task? The U.S. Valor was chosen. It was one of the most powerful ships in the human fleet, known for its strength and reliable crew. Its captain, Sarah Carter, was a woman of great skill and reputation. She had commanded the ship through numerous missions and had earned the respect of everyone who had served under her. If anyone could handle the delicate task of meeting an alien princess, it was Captain Carter. As the U.S. Valor prepared for the journey, the crew was filled with a mix of excitement and fear. They had heard about the alien princess's power, and the idea of carrying someone so important was both an honor and a challenge. Some of the crew members wondered what the princess would be like. Would she be kind, or would she look down on them? Would she demand special treatment, or would she respect their ways? The crew had little time to think about it. The U.S. Valor was ready to depart. Captain Carter gave the order, and the ship soared into space, heading toward the distant location where the princess was waiting. The journey ahead was uncertain, and no one knew exactly what to expect. But one thing was clear. This mission would change everything. Humans would have to prove their worth to an alien who had never seen their kind as anything more than a lesser species. They were about to show her just what humanity was capable of. As the ship left Earth's orbit, the crew looked out at the stars. There was a sense of anticipation in the air. The adventure was just beginning. Would the humans be able to earn the respect of the alien princess? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Humanity was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The U.S. Valor was no ordinary ship. It was a symbol of humanity's strength, a warship built for both power and precision. It was a ship that had faced many dangers, and yet it had never backed down. Now it was being prepared for the most important mission of its life, to pick up the alien princess, a being from a powerful species who had demanded to travel only on a human ship. Captain Sarah Carter stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. She couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was more than just a simple task. The princess had chosen a human ship, not because of its power, but because she had something to prove, to herself and to the galaxy. This was a chance for humanity to show that they were not the weak, unimportant species others thought them to be. But there was no denying that the task ahead was daunting. The crew of the U.S. Valor was experienced, but they had never dealt with an alien like the princess. Most of them had heard stories about her people, how advanced they were, how they had conquered worlds and crushed any species that dared challenge them. The idea of transporting such a person aboard their ship felt almost surreal. "We're ready, Captain," Lieutenant James said, snapping Sarah back to reality. He was the communications officer, always calm under pressure. But even he couldn't hide the nervousness in his voice. The entire crew had been talking about the mission for days. Everyone was eager to meet the princess, but also worried about what she would think of humanity. Captain Carter turned to him, her face serious. "Keep the communication lines open. I want to know if anything changes." "Yes, Captain," Lieutenant James replied, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying a hint of uncertainty. He wasn't the only one. Everyone on the ship had their doubts, even if they weren't saying it out loud. As the U.S. Valor made its way toward the location where the princess was waiting, the crew worked together to make sure everything was perfect. They polished the ship's equipment, prepared their weapons, and ran through emergency drills just in case things went wrong. The last thing they wanted was to make a bad impression on the princess. "We'll have to be on our best behavior," Captain Carter thought to herself. She had been through many tough missions, but this one felt different. This was about more than just winning a battle. This was about showing the princess and her people that humans were capable of much more than they thought. The ship's engines hummed steadily as they got closer to their destination. Sarah couldn't help but feel a little nervous. What if the princess didn't like the U.S. Valor? What if she didn't respect humanity at all? But there was no turning back now. The mission had begun, and they were committed. The U.S. Valor was a ship of strength, but it was also a ship of hope. It carried the hopes of humanity, a hope that the princess would see their worth, and that this journey would mark the beginning of a new chapter in human history. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the U.S. Valor reached the coordinates. The princess was waiting, and Captain Carter knew that everything depended on how they made this first impression. The moment had come. The moment the U.S. Valor arrived at the designated coordinates, there was a tense silence among the crew. The princess had been waiting for them, and this moment would decide everything. Would she be impressed by the human ship, or would she see them as inferior? The crew had no answers, only nerves and uncertainty. Captain Sarah Carter stood at the front of the bridge, her eyes focused on the incoming shuttle that would bring the princess aboard. She had seen many strange things in her career, but nothing quite like this. The alien princess was not only a leader among her people, but also someone who had chosen a human ship for her journey. This was a chance to prove that humanity could be more than just a footnote in the galaxy. "Captain, the shuttle is approaching," Lieutenant James reported, his voice calm but with a hint of excitement. "Shall we prepare for docking?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, make sure everything is ready. We need to show her that we are capable of this mission." The crew went into action, making final adjustments to the ship's systems and preparing for the arrival of the alien princess. Meanwhile, Sarah took a deep breath. She knew the pressure was on. The princess had demanded to travel on a human ship, but what if she expected too much from them? What if they failed to live up to her expectations? Soon, the shuttle docked with the U.S. Valor, and the airlock opened. The princess stepped out, her presence commanding the attention of everyone on board. She was tall, with sharp features and an air of authority that could not be ignored. Her long, flowing robes shimmered, reflecting the light of the ship, and her eyes, though calm, held a deep power. She was someone who had never known weakness, and she didn't intend to start now. The crew stood at attention as she entered, each of them trying to hide their awe and nervousness. The princess scanned the room with a sharp gaze, taking in the human ship, its technology, and the crew that stood before her. There was no sign of emotion on her face, no smile or greeting. She simply nodded once, acknowledging their presence. "Welcome aboard, Princess," Captain Carter said, stepping forward to greet her. "I'm Captain Sarah Carter. It's an honor to have you aboard the U.S. Valor." The princess studied Sarah for a moment, her eyes sharp but unreadable. "I did not come to be honored, Captain," she said, her voice calm and cool, but with a certain edge to it. "I came to see what your species is truly capable of." Sarah nodded, not surprised by the bluntness. "We're ready to show you, Princess. We'll take you where you need to go, and we'll do whatever it takes to get you there." The princess seemed to consider this for a moment, then turned her gaze to the rest of the crew. "I expect nothing less. But be warned, I have seen the best of the galaxy. I will not be impressed easily." The tension in the room was thick. No one spoke, knowing that the princess was not one to be easily swayed. Sarah didn't back down. She knew this was her chance to prove humanity's worth, to show the princess that Earth was capable of greatness, no matter how young or inexperienced they seemed compared to the other races in the galaxy. The princess gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, then turned away, her entourage following her closely. She was leaving no room for doubt. She was here to observe, to test, and to judge. Captain Carter watched her go, a fire in her heart. This was only the beginning. The U.S. Valor was ready to prove that humanity was more than capable. The princess settled into her quarters aboard the U.S. Valor, her eyes scanning every corner of the ship. She was quiet, observing the crew's movements, noting the technology, and studying the way humans operated. She had made it clear that she would not be impressed easily, and Captain Sarah Carter knew this. The crew, though nervous, tried to go about their duties as usual, but everyone felt the weight of the princess's presence. They knew that she wasn't just on board for a simple journey. She was here to test them, to see if humanity was truly worth her respect. Captain Carter stood on the bridge, watching as the ship sailed through the depths of space. "Keep your eyes open," she said to her officers. "Anything unusual, report it immediately." As if on cue, a sudden alert flashed across the screen. The sensors picked up an unknown object moving fast toward the ship. It wasn't a friendly vessel. It was an enemy ship, and it was closing in quickly. "Captain, we're being targeted," Lieutenant James called out. "They've locked weapons onto us." Captain Carter's heart raced. She had trained for situations like this, but nothing could prepare her for a first contact with an unknown enemy while carrying the alien princess. This was the moment. She needed to act fast. "Battle stations, brace for impact," Carter ordered. The crew quickly responded, their training kicking in. The U.S. Valor was designed to withstand attacks, but this enemy ship was different. The weapons it carried were powerful, and the ship itself was large and aggressive. The crew scrambled to their positions, activating shields and preparing weapons. Captain Carter turned to her communications officer. "Get the princess to the bridge. We need to show her how we fight." Lieutenant James nodded and left the room. Moments later, the princess entered the bridge, her gaze cold and calculating. She didn't look worried, just curious. "Do you plan to fight?" she asked in a calm voice, as if she was discussing the weather, not an impending battle. "Of course," Captain Carter replied, keeping her voice steady. "We may not have the best weapons, but we have something better, our minds. We know how to think on our feet." The princess studied her for a moment, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "We shall see." The enemy ship fired first. The impact shook the U.S. Valor, and alarms blared as the shields absorbed the blow. Captain Carter wasted no time. She ordered a quick evasive maneuver, sending the U.S. Valor into a sharp turn. The crew worked in unison, coordinating every move to dodge incoming fire. The enemy ship wasn't prepared for the human strategy. Instead of trying to outrun their attackers with speed, Captain Carter used the ship's agility to her advantage. The U.S. Valor weaved and dodged, making it difficult for the enemy to land a hit. "Their weapons are losing accuracy," Lieutenant James reported. "They're not used to this kind of combat." "Keep it up," Captain Carter commanded. "Let's show them how it's done." With a well-timed shot from the U.S. Valor, they struck the enemy ship's engines. It was a critical hit, and the enemy ship began to drift, its weapons going offline. But Captain Carter wasn't done yet. She had a message to send, one that would prove to the princess that humans were more than just survivors. They were fighters. The enemy ship retreated, unable to continue the attack. The U.S. Valor had won. The princess stood silently, watching the crew celebrate their victory. For the first time, she showed a hint of respect. "Impressive," she said, her voice softer than before. "You fought well, Captain." Captain Carter nodded, her heart racing from the adrenaline. "We fight to win. We never back down." The princess studied her for a long moment. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I thought." It wasn't much, but it was enough. The first test had been passed, and for the first time, the humans had earned the princess's respect. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but this victory was a sign of what was to come. The U.S. Valor had barely caught its breath after the first battle. The crew was still buzzing with the excitement of their victory over the enemy ship. Captain Sarah Carter walked briskly along the ship's corridors, making sure everything was in order. Despite the win, there was no time to relax. The princess was watching, and the pressure to prove humanity's worth was far from over. As the ship sailed through the unknown parts of space, the crew stayed alert, knowing that they could face another unexpected threat at any moment. The princess had made it clear that she expected them to be ready for anything. She was watching, not just for their strength in battle, but for how they handled every situation, big or small. "We've picked up a new signal," Lieutenant James reported from his station on the bridge. "It's coming fast. Looks like another enemy ship, much larger this time." Captain Carter's heart skipped a beat. The U.S. Valor had barely escaped the last battle unscathed, and now they were facing an even bigger challenge. "How long until they reach us?" she asked, her voice steady but sharp. 5 minutes, Captain," the lieutenant answered, his fingers flying across the console as he worked to track the enemy ship. "It's moving faster than we expected. It could be here before we're ready." "We don't have 5 minutes to waste," Carter replied, her mind already racing through the options. "Shields up, weapons ready. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. This time, we can't afford to be caught off guard." The tension on the bridge was thick. The crew moved quickly, preparing the ship for another fight. The U.S. Valor was strong, but facing a larger enemy ship was a different kind of challenge. Captain Carter knew that this battle would be more dangerous than the last. The princess entered the bridge quietly, her gaze immediately fixing on the screens. She didn't say a word, but her presence was heavy. She was watching, waiting to see what the humans would do next. "We'll fight back, Princess," Captain Carter said, her voice firm. "But we need your help. Your knowledge could make the difference." The princess looked at her, eyes narrowing slightly. "I didn't come here to babysit," she replied coolly. "I came here to see if your species has the will to survive on your own." Captain Carter nodded, understanding the challenge. She wasn't asking for help because she thought humanity was weak. She was asking because this fight could be too much for even the U.S. Valor. They needed every advantage they could get. "Understood," Carter said. "We'll handle it, but we'll need to be quick. Get ready for a fight." The enemy ship appeared on the radar. It was massive, much larger than the U.S. Valor, and it was closing in fast. It had powerful weapons, and the ship's armor was thick. The humans would have to be smarter, faster, and more creative to beat it. As the enemy ship fired its first shot, the U.S. Valor swerved to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. The princess watched closely, her expression unchanged. Captain Carter gave the order for the ship to circle around the enemy, using the smaller, more agile ship to their advantage. "Keep moving," Captain Carter commanded. "We'll outsmart them. Stay close to the asteroid field. We can use the rocks for cover." The crew followed her orders, dodging the enemy's fire and using the field of asteroids to shield the ship. It was a risky strategy, but it was working. The larger enemy ship couldn't adjust fast enough to catch them in the maze of rocks. "Target their engines," Carter said. "We need to cripple them before they can fire again." With careful precision, the U.S. Valor launched a series of missiles aimed at the enemy ship's engine core. The blast was powerful enough to shake the enemy ship, and it began to drift, slowing down as its engines were damaged. "We've got them," Lieutenant James yelled, his voice full of relief. The enemy ship, now crippled and unable to fight back, turned and fled, retreating into the darkness of space. The U.S. Valor had won again, but this victory was harder earned than the last. The princess watched in silence as the enemy ship disappeared. After a long pause, she spoke. "You humans are full of surprises," she said, her voice softer than before. "I'm beginning to see why you are still here." Captain Carter allowed herself a small smile. They had passed the second test, but the journey wasn't over, and they still had much to prove. The U.S. Valor wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's strength, and they had shown the princess just how much they were capable of. The U.S. Valor sailed through the vastness of space, its crew now more confident than ever. After 2 battles and a series of unexpected challenges, they had not only survived but emerged victorious. The princess, who had initially looked down on humanity, was no longer as distant or cold. She was observing them, yes, but there was something in her gaze now, something that hinted at respect. Captain Sarah Carter stood at the bridge, watching the stars streak by as the ship moved into a quieter section of space. The princess had become more vocal over the past few days, giving small compliments, though always carefully worded. She was not one to show weakness, but there was no denying the shift. The humans had earned her attention. Lieutenant James spoke up, breaking the silence. "Captain, we've received a message from the princess. She requests a meeting." Sarah nodded, her mind already turning. The princess had been more distant lately, observing but not speaking much. This was different. "Set it up. I'll meet her in the command center." Minutes later, Captain Carter entered the room where the princess waited. The princess stood by a large window, looking out at the stars. She didn't turn as Sarah entered, but her voice was calm and direct. "You've shown me your strength, Captain," the princess began, her back still to Sarah. "I thought your species would break under pressure. I was wrong." Sarah stood tall, not smiling, but feeling a wave of pride. It had taken a lot to earn this respect. "We've always known what we're capable of. You just had to see it for yourself." The princess finally turned to face her, her expression unreadable. "It's not just the battles that I'm impressed by. It's how your people adapt. You don't fight like the others. You think, you learn, and you grow." Sarah nodded, understanding what the princess meant. It wasn't just the power of their weapons or the size of their ships that made humans strong. It was their ability to learn from every experience, to adapt to any situation. In a galaxy filled with advanced civilizations, humanity's biggest strength wasn't in their technology. It was in their will to survive and thrive against all odds. The princess's eyes softened slightly. "I've seen many civilizations, Captain. Some are powerful, some are wise. But you surprise me. You're unpredictable. You don't back down, even when the odds are against you." Sarah felt a small smile tug at her lips. "We don't give up. Not when we're fighting for something worth protecting." The princess studied her for a long moment before she spoke again. "I will remember this. The galaxy will remember how your species stood tall when everyone thought you were weak. You've earned more than just my respect. You've earned a place among the stars." Captain Carter felt a surge of pride. The humans had proven themselves to be more than just survivors. They had proven that they were capable of greatness, even in the face of impossible odds. This wasn't just about winning battles. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. "I'll carry that message with me, Princess," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "Humanity is ready to stand with the rest of the galaxy, and we'll do it on our terms." The princess gave a small nod, her eyes finally betraying something that resembled admiration. "I believe you, Captain. I believe you." As Sarah left the room, she felt a quiet satisfaction. They had done it. The humans had earned respect, not through force alone, but through their courage, their ingenuity, and their refusal to back down. The princess had come aboard as a skeptic, but now she was an ally. And in the vast, unpredictable galaxy, that was a victory in itself. Facing a new threat, the U.S. Valor was sailing through the quiet stretches of space, the crew still riding high from their recent victories. Captain Sarah Carter couldn't remember the last time they'd had a peaceful stretch like this. The princess had begun to trust them more, and the tension that had once filled every room now felt lighter. Yet, Sarah knew better than to think they were out of danger. Space was unpredictable, and peace was always temporary. "Captain," Lieutenant James's voice cut through her thoughts. "We've got a new reading on the radar. It's strange and moving fast." Sarah's calm expression quickly shifted to focus. "What is it?" "It's not like anything we've encountered before," James replied. "It's small, but it's got an unusual energy signature. Could be a scout ship, or something worse." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Prepare for defensive maneuvers. Set a course to intercept." A deep sense of unease settled over the bridge as the crew quickly reacted. The princess, who had been standing quietly in the background, stepped forward. She knew the crew was preparing for something, and the change in atmosphere hadn't gone unnoticed. "You think it's another enemy ship?" she asked, her tone calm, but there was a sharpness to her eyes now. "We don't know yet," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady, "but we'll be ready for whatever it is." The ship's sensors continued to pick up the object, growing closer with every passing moment. The energy readings were odd, unlike anything the U.S. Valor had faced before. Sarah didn't like it. Not one bit. As the object grew larger on their screens, the crew could see it was fast, small, and darting unpredictably through space. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, too quick and nimble to be a traditional enemy ship. Lieutenant James spoke again, his voice tense. "It's getting closer, Captain. I recommend we prepare to engage." "Hold on," Sarah said, narrowing her eyes. "Let's see what it does first." The object darted in and out of their sensor range, making it difficult to track. Then, in a flash, it closed the distance, coming within striking range of the U.S. Valor. Sarah's heart raced as the ship's systems went on high alert. Before she could issue another order, the object fired. A bright, piercing beam shot out, striking the U.S. Valor directly. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring as the shields took the brunt of the blast. "Shields holding at 75%, Captain," Lieutenant James reported, his voice strained. "But if it keeps this up—" "I know," Sarah interrupted. "Get us out of here." Evasive maneuvers. The U.S. Valor lurched to the side as the crew scrambled to avoid another direct hit. The enemy ship was too fast, though. Its unpredictable movements made it hard to anticipate its next strike. The crew had to think fast. "What's the status on their weapons?" Sarah asked. "They're using an energy weapon," Lieutenant James replied, still trying to track the enemy. "It's powerful but has a limited range. If we can get closer, we might be able to strike." Sarah didn't hesitate. "I'll take the risk. Engage at full speed. Bring us as close as you can." As the U.S. Valor made a high-speed approach, the princess's voice broke through the chaos. "Your tactics are unorthodox, but if you expect to win, you will have to do better than that." The princess's words stung, but they also pushed Sarah to think harder. The ship needed a decisive move, something that would outsmart their elusive enemy. Sarah's mind raced, remembering the asteroid field they used earlier as cover. "Get us to the asteroid field," she ordered. "Use it as a shield." The U.S. Valor turned sharply, heading straight toward a dense cluster of asteroids. The small enemy ship followed, trying to stay on their tail. But now, the U.S. Valor had a plan. The asteroids would block the enemy's attacks, giving them the perfect chance to strike back. "Fire when ready," Sarah commanded. With a direct hit, the U.S. Valor unleashed a powerful blast. The enemy ship, caught off guard by the close-range assault and the asteroid shield, was struck in its power core. The ship staggered, slowing down rapidly, and its movements became erratic. The princess watched in silence, her expression unreadable. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the enemy ship's energy readings began to fade. It had been neutralized, forced to retreat. "We did it," Lieutenant James said, a mix of relief and pride in his voice. The princess turned to Sarah, her gaze steady. Your species has a way of fighting that is unpredictable and dangerous. Sarah allowed herself a small, victorious smile. We'll take that as a compliment. The princess nodded, her eyes narrowing. You've earned my respect, Captain. I will not forget this. Sarah stood tall, feeling the weight of the moment. They had faced yet another threat, and not only survived but won. In doing so, they had gained something even more valuable than victory: the princess's respect. The U.S. Valor drifted through the stars, its crew still processing the narrow victory over the unknown threat. The enemy had been unlike anything they had ever faced, but they had proven once again that when humanity came together, they could overcome even the toughest challenges. Captain Sarah Carter stood on the bridge, watching the stars flash by as the ship made its way toward its next destination. The princess, who had spent most of the journey observing in silence, had become more vocal in the days following their victory. She had slowly begun to accept the humans' ability to work together, something she had once doubted. But Sarah knew that there was still much to prove. "We've come a long way," Lieutenant James said, breaking the silence. He stood beside Sarah, watching as the rest of the crew went about their duties. "I never thought we'd be in this position, especially with the princess." Sarah smiled, but it was a tired smile. "We've all worked hard for this. It hasn't been easy, but we've made it." "And the princess?" James asked, glancing over at her. The alien ruler was standing near the observation window, her gaze lost in the vastness of space. "Do you think she's starting to trust us?" "I think she's beginning to understand us," Sarah replied. "And that's a start." As the days passed, the crew of the U.S. Valor worked together more smoothly than ever. Everyone had their role, and each person played it to perfection. From the engineers in the lower decks to the navigators on the bridge, every member of the crew knew what was expected of them. They had become a well-oiled machine, with Captain Carter at the helm, guiding them through the unknown. One evening, after a long shift, Sarah gathered the crew for a meeting in the ship's conference room. The princess, who had become more involved in their discussions, was seated at the table, her eyes sharp as ever. "We've done well," Sarah began, her voice steady. "But the journey is far from over. We're facing more than just enemies. We're facing a galaxy that doesn't yet understand who we are. But we're strong, and we're getting stronger every day." The crew nodded in agreement. They had faced dangers, and they had survived. But more than that, they had built something important, a sense of unity and purpose that tied them together. Each person knew that they were part of something greater than themselves. The princess looked at each of them, her expression thoughtful. "Your species is different from the others I've met. You work together, not as individuals, but as one. You trust each other. You're stronger for it." Sarah met her gaze. "That's the strength of humanity. We may not be the most advanced, but we have something the others don't. We have each other." The princess nodded slowly. "I see now why you are still here, why your species continues to survive. You may not be the biggest, but you're the most determined." The room was silent for a moment. The princess's words held weight, and for the first time, it felt like she truly understood what made humanity special. Sarah stood up, looking at the crew with pride. "This team is what makes us who we are. We fight together, think together, and win together. That's what makes us strong. And that's how we'll face whatever comes next." As Sarah's words settled over the crew, they all felt a renewed sense of purpose. The U.S. Valor was more than just a ship. It was a family. Each person, whether human or alien, played a vital role. And together, they could face anything that came their way. The princess stood as well, her eyes focused on Sarah. "You have earned my respect, Captain. I see now that you have a team unlike any I've ever known." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "And we're just getting started." The U.S. Valor cruised through the vastness of space, its destination unknown but full of promise. Captain Sarah Carter stood on the bridge, watching as the stars stretched out before them. The ship's crew had been through so much together: battles, close calls, and moments of doubt. But now, as they sailed through this new chapter, Sarah could feel that something had changed. They were no longer just surviving. They were thriving. Beside her, Lieutenant James was monitoring the ship's systems. "Captain," he said, his voice full of quiet excitement, "the readings are steady. The crew is in good shape. We're ready for whatever comes next." Sarah smiled, turning toward him. "Good. Keep an eye on the engines. We don't know what's ahead of us, but I'm confident we'll handle it." The princess, who had become a familiar presence aboard the U.S. Valor, stepped onto the bridge, her gaze sharp as she looked over the crew. She had been a silent observer for most of the journey, but over time, Sarah had noticed the respect in her eyes. The princess had begun to see humanity for what it truly was: strong, adaptable, and ready to face the unknown. "You've done well, Captain," the princess said, her voice measured but sincere. "Your crew, your people, they have earned a place among the stars." Sarah looked at her, surprised by the words. The princess had never been one to offer compliments lightly, but now there was something different in her tone. She wasn't just acknowledging humanity's strength in battle, she was acknowledging their potential. "We've only just begun," Sarah replied, her voice steady with conviction. "This is only the start of what humanity can do." The princess nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and curiosity. "I see that now. I've seen the way your people fight, how they come together. They are not afraid of the future. You are a species that thrives in the unknown." Sarah felt a surge of pride. She had led her crew through hardships, but now they were more than a group of survivors. They were explorers, ready to carve their place in the galaxy. The princess had seen that. The galaxy itself would see it soon enough. "You've helped us more than you know," Sarah said, turning to the princess. "Your presence aboard this ship has given us the chance to prove ourselves. We're stronger because of you." The princess didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked to the large window, looking out at the endless stretch of stars. "Perhaps there is more to humanity than I realized. Maybe the galaxy has underestimated you." "It's a lesson we've learned over and over," Sarah replied, her voice soft but resolute. "Never underestimate humanity." The crew continued their work around them, the hum of the ship providing a steady rhythm to the moment. Sarah knew that the challenges they had faced were nothing compared to what lay ahead. There would be more battles, more dangers, and more moments that would test them. But they were ready. "Captain," Lieutenant James said, pulling Sarah's attention back to the controls. "We're getting a signal. A ship from the Federation is requesting to dock with us." "Let's see what they want," Sarah said, her curiosity piqued. This could be the beginning of something new. As the Federation ship docked alongside the U.S. Valor, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. They had earned their place in the stars. Now, they were ready to take the next step. The princess, standing silently by her side, looked at her once more. "Whatever comes next," the princess said, "you've proven that humanity belongs here, among the stars." Sarah smiled, knowing that this was the moment they had been waiting for, the beginning of a new journey. Together, as a team, they would face whatever the galaxy had in store. The U.S. Valor was ready, and humanity had found its place in the universe.